Opportunity, mate.
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.
Bryce, is this thing on?
Ren, it is on. It is on. But before you ask me the question, the classic YouTube afternoon beer discussions question, there's probably a lot of our listeners who are listening on the main Equity Mates Investing podcast now that are losing their mind that for the first time in 290 odd episodes, they haven't heard me with the...
I finally started one.
You have, true. Finally started one. Just for those that are on the podcast, this is actually a YouTube video that Alec and I have been doing called Afternoon Beer Discussions. If you haven't come across the channel, it's obviously our Equity Mates channel. Please head across and subscribe. What we do is discuss one topic over one beer. There's a few rules, but to find out the rules to the game, well, we're actually going to tell you the rules to the game.
We'll recap them very soon.
But yeah, look, this is just to show you sort of the content that we're doing over at YouTube. So look, hope you enjoy. And Ren, over to you to kick off proceedings.
Yeah, well, content we're doing on YouTube, maybe releasing the audio as podcast form in future, but yes. Until then, jump over to YouTube and subscribe, or YouTube watchers, jump over to the podcast and subscribe. We're everywhere.
We are everywhere. Multi-channel, multidisciplinary.
Anyway, this is Afternoon Beer Discussions. We have a chat. It's a little bit more casual than the podcast, and we do it over one beer. That's the rule. As soon as we finish a beer, it's done. If the conversation's bad, either of us can scull our beer at any time and walk away.
Which thankfully hasn't happened to this point. I think the first episode you finished awfully quickly while I was talking.
But we always start this with a question, and so I'm gonna kick it off with a question today.
Okay.
So Amazon's got Prime Day. Alibaba has Singles Day.
Yeah.
What the hell is Tesla's Battery Day?
Do you want me to, do they actually have a
That's
battery day?
Yeah. It was yesterday.
Oh, they have a battery day?
Yeah.
Battery day for Tesla is where they I guess, discount the batteries that they have on sale.
But they don't discount the cars.
They don't discount the cars. I'm thinking the batteries that charge the cars, maybe.
Yeah, well, I feel like every company just wants a day these days. And so, yeah, Tesla had, I don't know if it was its first battery day, but it had a battery day yesterday. And that got me thinking about what the hell's going on in the electric car industry. So that's going to be the topic for today because, geez, there was a lot. Actually, overnight, all three of the major US electric car stocks got absolutely punished. Tesla down 10%, Nikola down 25%, Workhorse down 17%. So I'm keen to get into why. There's a lot going on there. A CEO resigning, a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, now that's interesting.
Time to be, I guess, an electric car investor, and we know a lot of the community are. Tesla has been such a hot stock this year. So
are you in Tesla?
No, I'm not. I want to be in one in terms of I hope my next car purchase is a Tesla, but I'm not in the stock.
Yes. Yeah.
But before we do all of that, this is Afternoon Beer Discussions, and we always crack a beer. And I've been out there looking for a beer sponsor. During COVID, we kept saying that on the video, and we're pleased to announce that this Afternoon Beer Discussions is brought to you by the boys behind the Batuta Bitter. Now you can get this fine beer at a number of bottle shops and soon to be at Dan Murphy's. So that's a coup for the Batuta
They're in
boys.
Dan Murphy's, I'm pretty sure, bro.
Well, there you go. So pick up some Batuta Bitter and we're going to enjoy one now.
We are, Ren. Cheers to our Afternoon Beer Discussions resurgence, and everyone listening on the podcast, crack a beer while you're listening to this, and you can join along, or a wine, or a whatever your flavor is. So yeah, Ren. So electric vehicles.
So yeah, electric vehicles.
They've done pretty well for themselves.
They've done very well as a stock over the years. Over this year in particular. So let me set the scene by giving you the journey of the three big electric car companies and how they've done this year. So Tesla has been the main one. Everyone knows Tesla. It's a $355 billion company headed up by Elon Musk, and they have had a pretty incredible run. From the start of the year, up 480%, their share price, up to the 31st of August. But then things have softened recently, and they're down about 25% really for the month of September. So things softening after an incredible run.
All those Robinhood traders getting absolutely burnt.
Yeah, that's it. But so Tesla, great run, 480% up is great. That pales in comparison to two smaller electric car companies, both traded in the US, that have had bigger rises and bigger falls in the year. So Nikola is probably the next best known electric and hydrogen car company. They're focused on... Well, what do you think the next biggest one is?
You reckon more well-known than Waymo?
Oh, I'm talking US only. There's a bunch in China. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, okay.
Wait, Waymo's
Google. Waymo's Google.
Google, and it's self-driving. It's not electric.
True.
I mean, I'm sure they...
True.
Yeah.
True.
So,
just butchered
Nikola,
that. That's okay.
Yeah, that's all right. Hey, the other rule for people who are unfamiliar with afternoon beer discussions is we don't edit.
Oh, yes.
Because
that is
editing video is beyond our skill set. So, hey, this is one take. Everything stays in.
One take wonder.
So next biggest in the US is Nikola. For those unfamiliar, hydrogen and electric trucks is really their focus. Their share price was up 673% to the 9th of June. So killed it. Like if you're investing in Nikola, you were very happy. But then their share price is down 74% since then. And it was down 25% overnight in the US in one day. And we'll get into the reasons why. But again, just setting the scene, an incredible run up. And then for them, they've lost 3/4 of their value in 3 months. So a pretty incredible story there that we'll get stuck into. But that's not even the best performing electric car company of this year. The best performing one, at least in the US, is a company that a lot of people probably aren't familiar with, a $2.5 billion company called Workhorse Group.
Yeah, I've never heard of these guys. No. They sound like they're a clothing company for tradies or something.
Well, they're not. But maybe that's a product extension that they can get into. They're focused on like an electric pickup truck is the name of their game. They're also trying to do like a electric helicopter type thing, but I don't really know what the go is there. I don't know if that's more marketing hype than anything else. So electric pickup trucks are really their main thing. Year to date, up to the 18th of September, they were up just shy of 900%. So, you think Tesla's 480% is good. Workhorse up almost 900%. But since the 18th of September, they've also softened down 27%, including down 17% overnight.
What's it called? Workhorse. This is just a classic situation, and you're seeing it here in Australia with the buy now, pay later sector. It's just a situation where you have one big brand that is just absolutely running, and it runs first, it runs strong, it gets a lot of attention, it gets a lot of media, a lot of people start saying that they're making a lot of money, and inevitably people start looking at the actual price of the stock. Tesla was hitting over the $1,000 mark at one point in time. Then they did the split, and there's probably this Workhorse. I don't know what it's priced at the moment. And Nikola,
$2.5 billion company, $22 a share. Yeah, exactly.
So it seems a lot more accessible for someone who's just kind of entering into the market or whatever. And there's this. What happens is you get this like rise of the industry or the sector as investors say, "Hey, Tesla's done well. Well, I guess these other ones are going to do well as well." You know what I mean? Like it's a weird psychological effect.
But what I'm wondering then is if Joe Rogan's getting hundreds of millions of dollars for his podcast, why isn't that boat, that rising tide lifting our boat as well?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting there. We're getting there.
But yeah, no, I definitely know what you're saying. It's people see an Afterpay and they're like, this is revolutionizing payments. It's disrupting the credit card industry. And then, your Zips, your Sezzles, your Splittits, your everything else, your FlexiPays all ride those coattails of the sort of groundbreaking first mover.
Yeah, and I just find it a fascinating sort of, I don't know, psychological anchor that, when you talk to people like, even colleagues or friends or whatever, they jump into the Sezzles and the what was the other one, Zip, purely because Afterpay is sitting at 22 and they're down in the $1 and $2, and they're like, oh well, it's got to hit 22, 23 bucks, and it's just a fascinating sort of mindset. Don't often fall for that trap. But anyway, sorry, Ren, I've derailed that.
No, that's all good. That's what afternoon beer discussions is all about. It's a lot looser, we can go off on tangents.
You go off on tangents all the time, but anyway.
Yeah, true. So look, actually, on that point though, around the smaller companies following the big one, in early September, there was a classic example of that in the electric car industry. One of Tesla's major shareholders trimmed their position, and Tesla shares fell a little bit as a result. And for no other reason than that, both Nikola and Workhorse had a down day. I think it was like 2nd or 3rd of September. And the reason given was, well, Tesla shares fell, so those two fell as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just like a industry leader can move that whole industry, for something that is quite specific to Tesla's stock there. So bad day all round yesterday. To recap, we're recording this on Thursday, the 24th of September. Overnight, so Wednesday, the 23rd of September in the US, Nikola was down 25%, Workhorse was down 17%, and Tesla was down 10%. So all double-digit falls across the board.
Now, the market itself was down 2.5%. There's actually been a bit of a sell-off going on since sort of mid-August, slowly sort of since mid-August, and has accelerated over the last few days, which is another interesting point that we might want to discuss on another afternoon beer discussions. But we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
And it's these sorts of stocks generally, you see it time and time again, these hot stocks that run and run and run are the ones when there's a little bit of a market correction. They're also the ones that absolutely get slammed. But I assume that I know that there are some actual stories behind some of these electric cars.
There are.
Yeah.
So for me, the electric car and hydrogen car industry is interesting. And even that dynamic, electric or hydrogen, is an interesting one. But for me, the story is such positive macro forces and such a strong tailwind, and then some quite company specific interesting elements. So if we start with the macro, even yesterday, the day where these three companies all saw double digit falls, again, there were such positive macro stories for them. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, announced that California would eliminate internal combustion engines by 2035. So any car sold in California after that day would be net zero emissions, which you would think, California, is the 6th biggest economy in the world?
Something like that.
It's like, why, if a state of that size and with that many people and with that much economic power, I guess, is saying we're going 100%, zero emissions, you would think that would be great news for these stocks. The government, with a stroke of a pen, has eliminated most of their competition, and yet they all have double-digit falls. And so, we're hearing more and more of those stories across Europe, across China. The move to electric cars is going to be government mandated, and it's going to come a lot faster than we expect. And we all know the reasons why. And look, it's personal opinion, it's a good thing that the government's stepping in here, because a car you sell today probably has 20 years of life on the road. So if we're serious about phasing internal combustion engines out, we need to start acting now. But the share price movement is just divorced from what's going on in the ground. And
that's happening across the market anyway.
Well, that is true.
More broadly speaking.
Yeah.
Question. So we're in 2020. You're saying by 2035, combustion engines will be a thing of the past for any new vehicles in California. Of the electric vehicle manufacturers that we're talking about now, Nikola, Tesla, Workhorse, Waymo, or they're self-driving, slightly different. Let's stick to those three.
There's a bunch in China as well that if people are interested in not investing in these three, China's probably the next place to look.
Do you think we have seen the company that will be leading the sales of electric vehicles in 2035?
Yeah, and I think it's an established company.
Yeah, like a Ford
GM's making a big push. GM bought 11% of Nikola a few months ago.
Devo.
I mean, look, every company's making a move. Yeah, Devo. But if I had to guess, probably like a European car company is probably going to be number one.
Yeah, right.
Tesla maybe. Like Tesla cars are great. Like I just love the Tesla car. Aside from how it runs and all of that, it's just a really nice looking car.
It is, yeah. One day.
One day. Hey, when we get that Joe Rogan podcast money. But I reckon the most interesting story is the Nikola story. So
let's dig into that.
So obviously they were flying. Their share price was up 600%.
Driving, you mean?
What did you say?
Driving. You said flying.
True.
Not my best. Sorry, not my best. Anyway.
So their share price was flying, and then things really fell off the rails. A short seller released a report. The short seller was Hindenburg Research, if people want to check out the report.
Just for those that are brand new to this, what is a short seller report?
So what we're seeing, so when you short a stock, you're basically betting that the stock will go down, and you make money if the share price falls. And so what we're seeing with a lot of short sellers these days is that they will take a short position, so put that bet or put that trade on that they'll make money if the share price falls, and then they'll release a report to the market that explains why they're short that position. And so it's been a pretty effective technique for investors of late. A number of big companies have seen their share price fall on the back of these short seller reports. Probably the most notable one in Australia of late was it Blue Sky? Yeah, that Blue Sky Alternative Investments that went to zero. Like it's no longer traded. And it was a US short seller that took a short position in the stock, released this report that just savaged it, and the share price fell as a result.
Yeah.
So anyway, this company, this research house and short seller, Hindenburg Research, good name for a short seller.
Hindenburg,
yeah. Released a report, made a bunch of claims, including that there was this video in like 2018 of a Nikola truck driving on the road. They claimed that video was fake. Nikola have claimed that they make a lot of their own parts in-house. The short sellers were criticizing that and saying that wasn't true. So there was a bunch of claims made. Nikola's response was incredibly lukewarm, including admitting that this video was fake. Apparently, they got their prototype truck, and rather than driving it down the road, they found a road that had like a low gradient.
You're kidding.
And they just basically rolled it. Yeah. And so there was that. They acknowledged that some of the parts that were supposedly made in-house were off the shelf. And like there was a bunch of things that the company basically admitted to.
It just fascinates me that, and it reminds me of the Bad Bloods book and podcast, what's it called? Pheromone.
Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos.
Theranos. Yeah. How these people genuinely think that they can deceive the market and other very, very intelligent and people out there, and in some instances, people who are specifically set up to uncover like fraudulent, deceptive behavior like this.
Look, I mean, I get what you're saying more broadly. I think the allegations made against Nikola and what happened at Theranos, different leagues. Like,
sure.
Like,
but I mean,
the fact that they faked a video doesn't actually say anything about whether their trucks work and whether they'll disrupt trucking.
It's
Which
just
is-
the
yeah,
flow-on
but-
effect that it
yeah.
has, though. Like you know, people pour money into it, perhaps based on a cardboard truck rolling down a hill. Look, GM bought 11% of the company.
It wasn't a cardboard truck, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to protect us here from you saying something outrageous that gets us in trouble.
Sorry, continue.
So, on the back of that lukewarm response from the company, the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission in the US, and the Department of Justice have both opened an investigation into the company. The CEO, well, so Trevor Milton was the founder and then CEO and chairman. He's resigned. And the other thing was, so Nikola is making a big bet on hydrogen, and hydrogen needs refueling stations, basically. Think, classic petrol station, but hydrogen rather than petrol. They were in negotiations with a bunch of those companies, like the BPs and stuff of the world. And those negotiations have also broken down on the back of this short seller report, the investigations, all of that stuff. And so that's all happened in the last week or two. The short seller report maybe a little bit longer, but Trevor Milton resigning and these negotiations breaking down. And so that's the big reason why Nikola was down 25% overnight. It's just this short seller report has really thrown a cat amongst the pigeons.
Yeah, which generally is the case when these reports come out, and one reason why a lot of people hate short sellers. But it's obviously enough in the report that is worthy and scary enough for the CEO to resign. Otherwise, you would think he'd be coming out there and refuting allegations pretty vigorously. The board would be behind him.
Yeah.
It seems all a bit not fishy, but if he's resigned and run for the hills, then you'd think, well, maybe this short selling report has something to it.
I agree, but here's my cynical take as well. Imagine if you had founded a company and I think he owns like 20% of the stock, or he owns a fair bit of the stock. So you founded this company, it lists, it's now worth $8 billion. Obviously it was worth a lot more, but still $8 billion is nothing to, nothing to complain about. He owns 20% of it. Potentially he's just resigning to protect his investment. He's a billionaire now out of this, and it's like, someone else can fight the good fight. He wants to just be a billionaire.
Fair call.
I mean, I'm not saying that's what he's doing, but
I mean, it's a pretty weak way to go out, in my opinion.
It is. Yeah.
You've done all this work, and then you've let one report kind of, who knows? Maybe that's what he was after this whole time. I don't know. Yeah,
and I mean, the other thing is, if he owns 20% of the stock, other investors and shareholders own 80% of the stock, and potentially there was a board movement. Kind of like what happened with Uber with Travis Kalanick.
Wasn't the right.
He didn't want to leave, but he got forced out. So anyway, so that's Nikola and GM, who bought 11%, standing behind them. But that will be a really interesting one to watch because, trucking, like obviously trucking is big business. Like that's obvious. It's but it needs to be disrupted if we're going to make this change. And Nikola seemed like a company that was going to really benefit from, this transition to a net zero economy and this fight against climate change. And now it's all a bit. Their product's probably still good, but it's all a bit up in the air now.
Well, do they even have a product?
They have a prototype, and look, my information might be out of date, but I'm pretty sure they have a prototype, and then they've got contracts for trucks. I think they got a big contract for a bunch of waste trucks recently. But it's not like they're at the Tesla stage where they're, pumping trucks off an assembly line. But to be fair, like Tesla was at this stage one time, and there was a bunch of short sellers then, and
big time.
They got through it. Yeah.
The thing with the GM. Pardon me, no edit. The thing with the GM is if they've come in to buy 11% of an $8 billion company, so they've spent about $800 million, close close to $1 billion.
Well, yeah, and it was when they bought it, it would have been more than 8 billion because it's 8 billion as of time of recording after the share price has fallen 74% from June.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for argument's sake, they might have bought in at double that.
So surely they would have done their due diligence on the whole thing as well. You know, it's surprising that I'm fascinated with how short sellers actually come up with this information and get it ahead of market, or is it that people aren't looking for it and they're always seeing the positive in these companies? Like you've got to, you know what I mean? It's just a fascinating dynamic.
I do. Yeah.
And no, I'm not thinking about becoming a short seller.
I mean, it's just, you know, like we've both worked at big companies and like how information flows through a company and, you know, like the different incentive structures that different people have. It's, you know, it's a difficult one to give you. Like, obviously I'm not going to be able to give you a reason why JM invested, but it's, yeah, you can understand how companies make these mistakes. And look, for all we know, GM's due diligence was good, and this company's trucks are going to revolutionize the world. And 3 years from now, they will have made a bunch of money. Nikola will have accelerated GM's transition, and this video will feel extremely outdated. We just don't know. Yeah.
So the question for me, Ren, then is, you know, you mentioned it before, the macros behind this are great. Do you have any more stories that you want to tell?
Yeah, I've got a few facts and figures about the other ones. But
okay, you do that, and then you do that, and I'll then close out with my question.
Okay. Workhorse, the company that no one's ever heard of, probably has the
$2.5 billion company.
Yeah, well, some people have heard of it, but I'm gonna hazard a guess that a lot of people listening to this podcast and video haven't heard of it. Price to sales ratio, 11,235.
Oh, what? They've made no sales?
Oh, they do. I think it's less than $1 million. I think it's in the hundreds and thousands a year.
And it's valued at $2.5 billion.
Yeah. It's just, it feels like the ultimate hype stock.
Whoa.
Yeah. Obviously not making any money. In fact, losing a lot of money every year. It's debt. I mean, it's funny. I was looking at its stock price and then the increase in debt over the last couple of years, and you could like chart it, and it sort of would follow a similar trajectory.
Wow.
Yeah. But I mean, look, again, it's sort of like if you're going to invest in industries of the future, they're going to have a runway to get started, and you just have to believe that they're going to get through it. But it's, you know, it was up almost 900% for the year. So there was a lot of belief built into that stock.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last one, just around Tesla. So battery day, I did, because that's how I started this, asking you what it was, because I had no idea. I was like, are they selling cars cheaper? Like, you know, Prime Day for Amazon and Singles Day for Alibaba. There's a whole bunch of bargains, and they try and just sell as much as possible that day. Battery day, I think, is just when Elon gives a speech. Apparently, the way that they gave the speech in this whole COVID times was all the shareholders in attendance sat in Teslas, and Elon gave a speech, and rather than applauding, they beeped the horn.
Where was this? In a gigafactory somewhere or what? Like, how many shareholders do they have? Yeah.
Well, it was just whoever was in attendance sat in a car and then beat the horn rather than applauding.
What goes on at Tesla?
Oh, I don't know. But he gave a speech. There was a bunch of stuff. The one that caught my eye was he is now saying that he wants to get a Tesla out that costs $25,000 US. So again,
wow.
I mean, if they can do it, and you think about the mass market appeal of a $25,000 Tesla, that's a pretty compelling price point for a pretty good car.
So if anyone is interested, if anyone's interested in checking out the Tesla battery day, I've just had a quick squeeze on YouTube, and there's a bunch of stuff that you can actually go and see this happen. So I'd recommend going and checking that out. So Ren, the question for me is that, you mentioned, as I said before, that this is a space that has great macro behind it. The world is certainly heading in this direction. You mentioned California. Number of other countries are also sort of making similar pledges. Why is it then that you're not invested in any of these companies, do you think?
I mean, the main one for me is valuation. I would love to be exposed to this industry, but whichever way I look at it, I just can't justify it. And I mean that's the long and the short of it.
Fair.
Yeah. Are you invested in it?
Obviously, indirectly through a number of ETFs, but not directly through.
Yeah. Are you though? Like, so they're not in the Tesla's not in the S&P 500. The other two wouldn't be. Are they? They might be in the NASDAQ 100.
Let us check that. But anyway, we could be wrong there. But to your point, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe not at all. I mean, if you're in the MSI World Index, you're probably scooping it up potentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, the volatility.
They would probably be in the NASDAQ 100. But yeah, that's a we don't know that off the top of our heads.
Yeah. DYOR, do your own research. For me, the volatility in this space, something that I kind of want to steer clear of at the moment. And you just mentioned Workhorse. I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of money coming in and out, and not a whole bunch of fundamentals that actually support the price movements in these companies. It's too hard for me to understand who's going to be a winner. 2035. It might well be the existing car manufacturers that just have their stuff sorted out.
I think that's a really interesting one to watch. I forget the name of the company that owns Mercedes and a bunch of other car companies, but they're announcing a whole bunch of net zero emissions cars and stuff like that. It's just,
they've got the
facilities. How the industry will shake out.
Yeah, they know how it works. I can certainly see that sort of a scenario happening where the Teslas of the world still exist, but you're really sort of cheap, accessible electric cars are coming from pre-existing sort of manufacturers that have been able to pivot. They've already got the scale, they've got the suppliers, they've got the know-how. It's just a matter of putting it into practice. So.
And I mean, who knows even what technology would win? Like there is a battle going on between hydrogen and electric in terms of which one will come out on top. So yeah, there's a lot to be shaken out. So I don't see. I would love to invest in the industry. I don't see a clear way to do it. Maybe if hydrogen wins and hydrogen refueling stations are ultra cheap. Hydrogen refueling station stocks are ultra cheap before they run or whatever it is. There might be an opportunity there. I just don't see it at the moment.
Nice, Ren. Well, unless you've got any other stories, I have finished my Batuta Bitter.
Just one last thing that people can read on their own. Tesla is now suing the US government over the China tariffs that Trump's put on. So that will be one to watch over the coming probably months.
Wow. Well, yeah, absolutely. Watch this space. So look, for those that are on the podcast, I hope you have enjoyed Afternoon Beer Discussions. Please head across to our YouTube channel to join us for a beer or a wine. Often I have a red, can't always get access to the beers. Ren's always on the beers, being the beer boy that he is. But look, thanks to obviously Batuta Bitter for the sponsorship of the episode, and great beer. We'll continue with this one until Ren gets out there and sells some more advertising spots. But as always, Ren, great to chat stocks. One topic, we've both finished our beers, and looking forward to catching up Afternoon Beer Discussions next week.
Yep, sounds good. I'm looking forward to doing this consistently from here on in.
Yeah, I get it. Get off my back.